Sherman coming to you again from Tempo Trend Studios, Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Continuing on in our series of quarantine blues seminars to help you get through this time. Maybe you can advance yourself when the smoke clears from all this, and hopefully we're back to a healthier, happier time. You'll have something to show for it. So it's a good time to woodshed, just hide out and advance yourself in certain respects. So I always like to recap a bit before I start, and I'll do a little blues to warm up here, get myself in the swing of it, illustrate some of the things that are coming on the horizon. What we attempted to do was incorporate a different way of looking at a blues progression, ultimately all progressions, but we're starting with the blues. It's such a familiar thing, it's the foundation of rock and so many other things that we play, and those elements can be found in country music. You'll find them in even folk music. You'll hear those little things, little ingredients that tweak you a little bit, and you think, well, wait a minute, I'm just playing in one dimension with pentatonic minor. So that's really what got me started thinking about this whole thing many years ago, when I noticed that my own playing left me far less than inspired when I listened back to it. And some of the classic solos that I heard, not just on guitar, but they always say, listen to horn players, listen to saxophone players. You'll notice that they tweak elements of the chords as they're going by, what I like to call the chord of the moment. And I think guitar players, because it's so linear and because of the way our fretboards are laid out, we tend to just think in patterns. And that makes it easier to get going, but it's also a trap. It's a dead-end street, because you get down there and you're thinking, well, how do I advance from that? Well, that's why it's going to be an adjustment period for you, and I have empathy for you in that, because I had to go through it, and I still apply myself to these concepts every time I play. I'm thinking, what chord are we on? I remember somebody saying they had a guitar lesson with Joe Pass, and they said, what was it like? And he said, well, we would jam, and then every now and then he would grab the neck of my guitar and say, what chord are we on? Ask yourself that. When you're jamming, do you know what chord you're on? If you're playing along with a machine, are you thinking of that? I think one part of your consciousness should be on where we are at all times, like driving. Where's the road? You got to keep your eyes open. And also, when you get that down, you could say, well, what's coming on the horizon? What's coming up? So you can play a better line that leads the listener to where the progression is going. That's not the easiest thing to do, but I think it's something to aspire to. I think it's worth our time, and what better time to do it than now? So, in summary, we talked about the major, minor, pentatonic overlaps, and I hope you've got those on the go. We focused on one column last time, trying to get a real foothold with this thing. The major, which is form 2 that most people play at some time, at least parts of it. Form 1 is all too familiar. It's the one most people lean on. And I introduced the Mixolydian mode on the 5 chord in this case, which is D. We're staying with the key of G. So we'll recap all those things in the playing. I'm going to be doing some of that in the song I'm playing now, but I'll be in the key of C. Just to clear the air here, I'll just take a few choruses, and then we'll get right back to the lesson. 2, 3... get noodly after a while, but I was trying to display as many of these little techniques that would be coming on the horizon. I threw in a lot of double stops, some bends, a lot of passing tones, some of which we talked about. We talked about the flat fives last time a little bit. So in the key of C, that would, when you heard me going, and you hear that a lot if I'm on the F chord. Very important thing to throw in there. The flat fives, one of those ingredients, if you handle them with care and you put them in the right spot, they really add so much. All right, back to the key of G. I talked last time a bit about going from chord to chord and how hard it is to find the next best note. Now, right now we're playing in a very didactic sort of way of thinking, like instructional. Not the way that I want to play. I'd rather just clear the deck and just play from instinct. But you can't do that and create a new style at the same time. So we have to risk that and get really right brain with it. I think, no, left brain, I'm sorry. Left brain is the logical, see, my brain is confused. Left brain is the logical part, so we're going to stay there. The intuitive part, the right brain, which is where you want to be when you're creating. We have to kind of subordinate that a little bit. So right now we're thinking very analytically. It's going to stifle your creativity a little bit, but it's going to lay a foundation, as I always say. So we talked about the major minor, and you got your Mixolydian for D, we talked about last time, which was this. And for G. Okay, so you got that, those ingredients in there. You're good to go for that. Now, there's one more thing here, one more element, one more degree that'll create some depth. Also create what I like to call contour. So when you're hearing people sweep, those kind of things that you hear rockers doing, they're sweeping. Those things have a lot of contour. What those are Arps. They're arpeggios, which means literally broken chord. You've got the notes of the chord spelled out. So if I were doing that on the D7 chord, in the third column here, down below Mixolydian mode, which was, here's the arp right below it. And we're going to feature the box note there. So I have the sixes, the sixth interval, which we'll be talking about that theory a little bit. The triangles and the boxes are the non-essential, they're the color tones in this, okay? So you're playing the basic, the star note is the root, going up the line here. So 5th fret, I'm on the middle column here of Arps. 5th fret, 4th fret, next string, 2nd fret. We're going to avoid the triangle, reach right over to the square. Can you hear how that bites? You can hear that, right? So that's essential notes of the chord, but we're featuring the flat 7, the 7 tone, right, in this case. And then carry on, middle finger, 3rd fret, next string, 2nd fret, 1st finger, and then pinky, 5th fret. So here's what your arp sounds like on D7. And you can put pull-offs and hammer-ons. I can't tell you how long I've spent on these things going. I would urge you to do the same thing. Just get those things down so you don't have to think about it. Now, what does that do? Well, on the 5 chord, as I mentioned last time, you don't have much time. You only have, to do the Mixolydian. You don't want to be doing something like that out of character with your song. So you wherever you happen to be, if you're here, that might be all you have time for, or that might be all the time you have. And then you're on your way to the C chord, which needs that pentatonic minor. So what are you going to do in a case like that? Well, you got to budget your time, and you have to play the essential notes. Well, the essential notes are the arps. Okay, so somebody might argue and say, well, why don't we just play arps? Because that's got all the tones. Because it would be very stiff sounding if you just played arps on every chord. I'll demonstrate that and show you it's not going to be the thing that you want to do. So I'm going to move to the key of G here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to spell out the arps for you. But first I'm going to show you the G7 arp. That's in the first column. And there's a stretch here, so I have them marked. So the fingertips are marked there, as you'll see on the chart when you look at it. So start with the root G, first finger, stretch to the 7th fret, pinky. Then your 3rd finger on the 5th fret, next string. Next string, the box, you want that because that's your flat 7, your 7th tone. So far we have, that stretch will be annoying, but you'll get over it. Notice I'm not playing the triangle because that would be something else. So carry on, middle finger, 4th fret, next string, 3rd fret, pinky on the 6th fret because it's a box, don't worry about the triangle right now, and then 3rd fret and then stretch to 7th. So how does that sound? Sorry? Again, you've got to spend the time going down and up. Picking is nice. So we've got that one, and we've still got the D. I hope you still have it. Now, what does this do for us? Well, when you have a short window of time to establish something, you definitely don't want to get too notey because it'll sound out of character. Like I said, with the song, you might be playing some nice easy swing, and then all of a sudden you got all this notes. You don't want that. So an arp is a great way to get up to the note you might want. You could even sweep it. You could go slowly. That would be. You could go. No, that wouldn't be it. So anyway, you could go. So you could find. But don't miss a chance to play those boxes, those squares that I have there, because those are the color tones that define that chord. So again, we're talking about the essential chord tones here that the arps provide, but also putting little flavors in between the lines. So when it comes to a G7, if I happen to be on the root, I try to avoid the roots because you want to get into the center strings. But if I happen to be there, I'll go. I might play that, or I might start here. Or I might start here. Just pick a note and play the next few notes going into it. Backwards. That'll give you something you can grab onto and then trail off and do a bend or something. You're going to be doing what I hope you're going to end up with as your own style. You'll merge your own licks with this new skeleton that's going on underneath. And the same with the D. You've got your Mixolydian mode. Right above that, you'll notice I put them parallel to each other. So you have your, and you have the. So let's say somebody who had 4 seconds on the D, you might go. You might do a little sweep on the arp, and then trail off on the scale. So that might end up. So those are the kind of things that'll happen as you bring these two elements to bear upon your already, shall we say, evolving style. All right. So I'm going to play the blues in G. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just play primarily arps just to show you how strong those are. So to facilitate that, I'm going to need the one that's in column 4. So you'll have to look at you don't have to look at that right now. We don't need it necessarily, but we will. If you're adventurous and you're already on this, then go for it. So column 4 shows what would be played over. These are chord by chord basis. So if the root is on C, then you've got a C. So column 4 at the 3rd fret. I should have said, I guess, before too, and I hope I did. The D is written as it would be at the 5th fret starting. The G, one that I did for G, the arp, you start at the 3rd fret, and I hope you got that because it looks like it's at the 1st fret, but it's really the 3rd fret. Because it's chord by chord basis, you got to be on the root. So put if you know some of the notes across the neck, as I hope you do, you'll be fine. So here's C at the 3rd fret, and I'm in the 4th column. Here's the arp. Bit of stretch there. Here's a square. Now, how do you handle this? You could lay your 3rd finger down. I tend to bring pinky in and borrow it. And go back to my regular. And I skipped the triangle and went to the square. So 3rd fret, 7th fret, next string, 5th, 3rd, 5th, next string, 5th, 3rd fret, and then 6th. That sounds like this, over a C7 chord. Sorry, I've screwed up there. Okay, so now we have all 3 chords covered. I'm going to try to just play arps on each chord, and I'm going to do this really slowly, just so you can hear that technically it works and it spells out the chords as well as anything can. And it has to work because it's exactly, it's saluting the chord, each chord as it goes by. This is really slow, 57 or something. Here we go. G, C7, G7, C7, right, that one, G, the D, C7, G, D. Okay, so you can see that that works, but it sure isn't, it doesn't have any flow to it. All it has is, it's very robotic, but it gives you contour. Contour is a very important concept, and I find that a lot of songs that are written these days don't have any contour. So it doesn't work for me as well as something that has a really nice, catchy hook, shall we say, if it just stays on one note. Now, you can do a lot with one note, and there have been a lot of nice drony sort of things that have been done. But in terms of soloing, you stay on one note too long, it's not gonna satisfy. So you need to get up and grab some of the tones of the chords as they're going by, and then find your way, hopefully, to the next chord in time, like our game of musical chairs that I always speak of. So in this case, a little goes a long way with these arps. So play an arp up to a note and trail off on the Mixolydian mode. I think that's a good concept. Now, case in point, and something that I've been asked a number of times, why not just dispense with the pentatonics and just play Mixolydian mode on everything, and arps and Mixolydian modes? Wouldn't that work? Yes, it would work. Mixolydian mode, of course, any scale, if you just use scales, it sounds very viney after a while. Too many notes. Arps maybe have too few notes. Great contour. So there's trade-offs in each approach. My vote, mix them all. Use every approach and find your own strategy to produce, and using your impulses to produce emotional music. That's the stuff that I enjoy listening to the most. I don't want us to stay in this technical frame of mind any longer than we have to. We have to lay it out that way so you can advance yourself, but you don't want to live there. We're going to visit there and get the ideas, get the concept, get the theory, what I call practical theory. So I'm going to try to play just Mixolydian mode and arps, okay, on each chord as they go by. So for that, I'm going to need a Mixolydian mode for the key, for the C. So you'll see in the 4th column, and again, you have to put the root where it is, so it looks like a B on there, the way it is, because I didn't have room on the chart. So move it up to the 3rd fret, and that'll cover you for C7. Here it is. And you can hear it fits hand in glove on that. Okay. So we've got 3 up top there. I got Mixolydian for G, C, and D7, along with the arps supporting it. So I'm just giving you the overview of what these sound like, and you can focus on those 3 chords to bring them in to some semblance of accessibility, and if you can find them in time, incorporate them. If you can't find them in time, you're either playing the backing track is too fast, and I've slowed this way down to, well, it went back to 80 now, but anyway, since I stopped it. But let's move it down to, I think I had 57, I'll say 60, okay? So I'm just going to play mainly Arps and Mixolydian mode. Okay, here I go. On the G. C7, G. On the C. On the G. On the D. On the G. On the D. G. C. G. On the C. On the G. On the D. C. G. On the D. On the G. We're home. Okay, so very stilted way of playing, but a darn good way to practice and getting a sense of where all the nooks and crannies are between chords. This is something that every horn player, I think, understands, because they're not busy with the sort of the geography that we reference. They're pulling the notes out of the air, the sounds, and I think we got to get back to that on guitar and find out where those notes are. So all I'm doing is giving you ways to find them faster than you might if you were just hunting and pecking around here, which is trial and error, which usually puts your band and anybody listening to you through a lot of stress trying to wait till you find that next best note. So let's see if we can get to that next best note the most efficient and effective way, and I think that'll be the most satisfying for you. Okay, so now you'll be bringing all those things to bear on that kind of thing. Let me show you what that will start to sound like in this one column right here without going anywhere around the neck. So let's see what that would sound like. And I'm going to try to stay in that slower, excuse me, slower parameter so you'll have time to think and breathe between it. He said as he coughed into the microphone. Sorry about that. Scratchy throat after a day of teaching. So 60, something like that. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to incorporate all those elements, and I'm going to try to avoid licks. I may shake a note here and there, and no shame there, but we'll see what happens. Okay, and I won't call out the chords. I think you'll know what I'm doing, but I'll stay right in this area. Okay, here we go. the sound of that. I mean, it's simple. I'm not doing anything really fancy or scary, but in that area, I'm kind of tailing that in. Now, before I leave on this, we're running out of time for this third installment. What I'd like to do is I've isolated what I call sort of the home stretch of a blues, 12-bar blues, would be coming off the 5 chord, which, as we just stated, was the D7, the ARP and corresponding Mixolydian mode, to the C, the C7, which has the minor pentatonic and the corresponding Mixolydian mode. It's that turning point, so I've isolated on the looper going from the D to C7 back and forth. So bar 9 and 10 respectively, I think. So this is an example of something that I notice where players falter. They're coming off a really nice Mixolydian thing and they can't find something to do on C. See how many times you can land on your feet coming back and forth. So here it is. This is a bit fast maybe, but I'm giving you 2 bars on each, right? So D7, C7. So here's our C. D, C, So hopefully that will show you how you could use a looper, pedal, or any sort of recording device to isolate the chord changes. Just do them over and over and over again and solidify your tonal sense of where the next best note is. That is essential at this point before we go on to the next thing. Next stop will be putting this all together and trying to go up the neck a little bit before we get too far away, and then bringing in double stops and some more chromaticism. I'm looking at my notes briefly. I'm trying to keep my eye on the camera, but tritones we've got coming up here, some more soloing strategies, developing themes through your playing. I'm going to throw in some bebop phrases with added passing tones, and then we'll get into minor blues using the Dorian modes and some of the other modes. So we've got a lot of things on the horizon. I hope you can stay with us and stay well, and we'll see you next time.